Hello to all of you. We're so glad you came our way. We hope our time with you will be a blessing and increase your understanding of the Bible. If you would like to donate and help grow this ministry, please check the options below. And folks, we will send you a free copy of our booklet, Training Your Children in the Way They Should Go. Thank you so much. And now let's enjoy some questions and answers from the Bible. Hello folks, we're back. I guess you are too. This is the Truth Shall Make You Free time that we want to spend with you tonight. It is evening on our farm. And I want to read to you a very special 3 verses to start with. Psalms 1, hey, do you know where we're going? Verse 1 through 3. Blessed is the person that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. How about that? But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. Scriptures on your mind constantly. What will happen? He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, and that will bring forth his fruit in his season. His leaves also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. That has been one of my favorites, maybe the favorite, who knows. Anyway, for a long, long time. Tonight, we're going back to Genesis chapter 12. And I presume you read ahead. I did. We did. So it's about time to get started. Chapter 12. Here's the first question for our question answering time. Who told Abram to leave and get out of Ur?
God did.
God did. Well, you know, we think of Abram as Abraham, so it's a little hard to get used to Abram, isn't it? How about the next question? What were the 2 blessings given to Abram?
One was that he was going to make him a great nation, and that in him all the nations of the earth would be blessed.
All the peoples. There's something kind of interesting here. Because of this promise, something was going to begin to happen. Remember back in Genesis 3:15, we were promised that something was going to begin in that bloodline, and Abraham was the extension of that bloodline. And all nations of the earth would be blessed because of him. Well, first off, he was the father of the Jewish people. And secondly, he was going to be the spiritual father of all Christians who would have faith in Jesus and obey and follow him. So in a sense, had you ever thought of it? In a sense, this was the beginning, the very beginning of the church, the spiritual house of God. The people of God were going to come from this eventually. Anyway, question number 3. What noted man went with Abraham?
Was it his nephew, Lot?
Lot. We hear quite a bit about Lot. We'll hear more as we go along. Next question. How old was Abram when he left Haran here?
75.
75 years old. Now, when I was 75 years old, I was not in a feeling position that I wanted to go anywhere. How about you? I kind of wanted to stay home. Yes. 75 years. Next, what happened at Bethel in the Canaan land?
I think that's when the Lord appeared to him.
The Lord appeared to him. They had traveled a long distance. This area that he left was called the Mesopotamian Plain, which embraced both Ur and Haran. Ur south, Haran up north as he went through. And when they left there, like we said, he was 75 years old and arrived over into what we know as the Promised Land, which would be Syria and south of there. So God appeared to him. What was Abraham's reaction to this appearance?
Well, it seemed like anytime God came to him, he wanted to build an ark. He wanted to worship God.
He wanted to build an altar.
Oh yeah, an ark, altar.
Altar. Yeah. And he was that kind of man. And I think as we all develop in the Christian way, it's just very easy, whether in the recliner or driving down the street or wherever, to think of God and thank Him, praise Him, and have all kinds of good thoughts that we think about in regard to our Lord. What way did Abram journey from this location?
He headed south.
Yes. What was the distress in the land at that time?
Well, it was a famine and there was nothing to eat.
Well, why wasn't Abraham favored enough that God didn't hit him with a famine? Now, of course, this probably came in the course of nature, as it does, but God could have touched it a little. But you'll notice that God does not let those who are His people not experience the hardships. He has a reason. And I think you know what that is as well as I. Next question. What was Abram's chief concern as he journeyed toward Egypt?
Well, himself. He didn't wonder how he was going to take care of him.
Yeah, he had himself in mind, and I guess I would too, for probably the same reason. What was his final decision concerning this matter?
Well, I guess it was Sarah, because he was afraid that the king would take her. So he said, say you're my sister.
You're my sister. Well, that was kind of true, but not altogether true. You see, Sarah and their people were kind of fair-skinned compared to the copper skin of the Pharaoh's people. So she would be quite attractive just from that standpoint, and probably in every way she was a beautiful woman. Anyway, what happened to Sarah in Egypt?
Well, she was taken to Pharaoh's house to live.
Yeah, how about that? You arrive in a place where you hope it's going to be nice and nice. Well, I guess it'd be nice to invite it to the president's residence, but not for this reason. Anyway, next, was this all a material benefit to Abram at this time?
Yes, it turned out to be.
Yes, for a while. Well, it did, yes. Next, what did God do to Pharaoh and his house?
He put a plague on him.
Put a plague on him. Now, when God does something, He does it good, and you know that God has been there. I wonder if that was a foretelling of what was coming years later. Anyway, what did Pharaoh do because of this?
Well, he got really kind of frightened. He called Abram up there and says, "What have you done to me?
Yes.
Why haven't you told me this?"
We're not told how he found out, but he found out somehow. Maybe he had a talk with Sarah. I don't suppose she was too keen on this, but this is how it turned out. And there was a plague going on, and something needed to happen. Pharaoh commanded what because of this?
Well, he said, "You guys, you better get out of here. Take
Yeah.
everything you have and get going."
I don't imagine they wasted any words, so that took care of chapter 12, and that's pretty neat. How about chapter 13? Was Abram quite rich at this point?
I believe he was.
Yes. So he left. Where did Abram stop first as he went north?
There's a town called Bethel.
Bethel. That was a prominent Bible place in history. Did Lot, next question, did Lot, being with Abram, have flocks and herds like he did?
Yeah, he did.
Yes, he did. And, you know, these were kind of tribal situations, and they were used to moving. They would, way back in Ur, they would ever so often move a few miles so that their flocks could have new grazing. So it was not a new thing for them. It would be for me, probably you too. Most of us don't like to move too often. I have heard there are some people that like to move, and they move just because they like to move. That's not us. That's not me for sure. We've lived on this farm for 50 years, so we're not too tribal, are we? Anyway, what happened at this time?
Well, Lot's herdsmen and Abram's herdsmen kind of got in a struggle.
They got in a fuss, all right. I don't know what all went on, but I can imagine, like, you can too. Have you ever been in a church fuss? Oh, no, we don't talk about that, do we? Somebody wants something that somebody else has, and we don't have enough of what? Anyway, what was Abraham's reply to this strife?
Oh, Abram says, "Please, let's not have any strife."
Abraham was a laid-back phlegmatic, a laid-back man that just didn't go for strife. And that's a good trait. There's no reason for that. So Abraham said, "We're not going to have any strife." And what did he say was the reason for that?
Well, because we're brethren.
We're brethren. In the church congregations, we're brethren.
We're family.
We're family. We're not going to have the fussing and the fighting. Have you ever done some study along the line of yielding your rights? Giving in where you can give in for sure, not necessarily the gospel, but and the truth of the Bible, but there's a lot of ways that we can yield our rights and cut strife off at the gap. Yeah. What did Abram offer as a conclusion here?
Well, take your pick. You go either right or you go left, and I'll go the other way.
Now that's Abraham. That's the way he solved things. Take your pick. Where did the eyes of Lot seem to travel?
Well, on the very best part.
Very best part. Who wouldn't? Have you ever looked for the biggest piece of chocolate cake and hoped it was closest to you so it wouldn't look like you were reaching too far to get it? Now, Dick. Yeah, isn't that human? Yes, indeed. So Abram went where?
Abram went to Canaan, and Lot went to Jordan.
Yeah. Lot says pitched his tent toward Sodom. A lot of lessons, a lot of sermons have been built around this, because as you learn about the consequences, Lot did not make a good choice. What was the spiritual condition of Sodom?
Very awful.
Very wicked. The kind of sins that when the Old Testament rolled around, they would even put people to death when they did those kind of things. And they're certainly frowned on and taught against from the faithful pulpits of the land today. These things are not good, and a good study of what happened there with Sodom and Gomorrah can help you realize that. What did God tell Abram to do now?
Well, he says, look all around you. Go northeast, south, and west.
Everywhere you look. Now, Bethel and those places, you could look a long way and see an awful lot. And that's what Abraham experienced at this time. What was God's promise?
Well, he says that all that you see is going to be yours, Abram.
All that you can see. How about that? Have you ever had a promise like that? Ever had a proposition like that? Well, God had big things in mind, and big things were going to come out of this. How numerous was his seed to be?
Seems fantastic, because as many as the dust of the earth.
Dust of the earth, sands of the sea, stars of the heavens. What better illustrations could he give? My gracious. And yet he didn't have any children. This became quite an issue, didn't it? God never allows a Christian to not have issues in their lives. Why? Because I believe we grow more with our stresses and difficulties than when things are going good.
Another thing is you don't trust the Lord as much either if you do it all.
This is a learning to trust God situation. And haven't you done more of that of late? We have, and we are going to continue to do that. Join with us, please. Where did God tell Abraham to walk?
Just walk throughout the land.
Yeah. I've heard some crazy things in my day. If you row a boat in a certain area, you get all that you can row around or walk around. Let me tell you, this was quite an experience. Where did Abram next pitch his tent?
I think it was Hebron.
Hebron. This became a common location in this Old Testament history. What did Abraham do here?
Well, he built an altar.
Same old Abram. He, even though had gone through so many difficulties, he still did not lose his attention toward God. And let me tell you, folks, we don't want to either. Now that brings us to chapter 14. I guess we are moving along here pretty decent. But remember the lesson of Lot. He had a worldly view of things, and that certainly was not healthy. Sometimes people move to a location just because of money, but they never found out if there was a faithful church there first. Well, anyway, do some good thinking and good praying. Chapter 14. Oh, there's some names here. Do you want to pronounce them? I think I'll skip some of them anyway. What was the name of the king of Sodom?
I had to look. It was Bera.
Well, that one was easy enough. Bera. How about this next question? What king came against Sodom and Gomorrah?
Chedorlaomer.
Chedorlaomer. Or Chedorlaomer. Take your pick. Maybe you'll remember this by next week, who knows. Anyway, he was the main one, and he led the group. Where did they meet for battle?
It said in the Vale of Siddim.
Siddim. Yeah.
Maybe the valley?
That's where they met,
Yep.
and they had it out. What was the description of this vale?
Oh, it was full of slime pits.
Full of slime pits. So that indicated what was in the area. And this was valuable to Egypt down in that area. And I've read, and I can't remember the figures, and if I could have put my finger on it, I would have brought it here. But the mineral and salt and the fertilizing value of the area around Sodom and Gomorrah was just out of this world. I mean, the dollar value was greater and is greater than some of the countries that we're familiar with. This was discovered not a whole many years ago. Such a valuable area. Spiritual value, yes, but material value. But anyway, question number 5. What happened to the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah?
They fell into the pits and then they ran off to the mountains.
Well, I'd have thought they'd have been aware of this, but who knows what. Anyway, let me out of here. What did Chedorlaomer take with him?
Well, he took the spoil and Lot.
He cabbaged on to Lot and his people and all the spoil of the area. Now, Lot didn't realize it, but he was learning it, and he was learning it the hard way. The people you associate with are going to determine a whole lot of your future. I've heard it said that the 5 people you associate with in life is going to determine life out in front of you. So when the New Testament teaches evil companions corrupt good morals and manners, I think it's something that we need to pay attention to very keenly. Next, how did Abram know of this particular capture of Lot?
Well, someone escaped and ran and told him.
Someone got loose and ran, which, that's what I'd done. Didn't do any good to stay and fight, did it? Anyway, how many men did Abraham get together to go after these folks?
318 of them.
318. Now these tribal gatherings had their servants, and Abraham, you see, they were born into the whole situation, and that increased their number over the years. And Abraham had done some training with these men, so he had 318 men who could do something in this behalf. To what place did they pursue after Lot?
Dan?
Dan, yeah. Nancy's a little slower on that one, wasn't she? Hello, Dan. Where was Dan? Well, folks, Dan was clear up close to Damascus.
It's kind of up north.
Way up north. Up in the area where Saul of Tarsus was converted.
You know, there's a lot of mountains out around there. They had to
Yeah.
take the time.
Dan. Next question. How did Abram attack the enemy?
They divided each other. They divided themselves into 2 groups.
they divided and surprise attacked them. Did Abram gain all back that was taken?
Yeah, fortunately.
Yes. What king met Abram on his way back?
Sodom did.
King of Sodom. Well, I guess that's a normal, a natural. Where did he meet Abram?
In the King's Dale, I think they call it Shava.
Shava? Remember that? Oh, I'll let you off on that one. What other important king was there?
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek. This has always been an interesting Bible story, and we'll try to glean some goodness out of it. Was Melchizedek the priest of the Most High God?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, out of Jerusalem. He was a self-appointed spiritual man, and there were those kind back in those years. Just like Abraham was a spiritual man, so was this man a spiritual person. What did Melchizedek say to Abram?
He said, "Blessed be God."
He pronounced his blessing on Abraham, and that's understandable. What was paid to Melchizedek at this time?
Tithes.
A tithe. Now, how would they figure a tithe? Clear back here. Something to think about. Matter of fact, if you read Leviticus 27:30, in that particular set of verses, the Lord declares that the tithe is His. And I think that was the verse that finally settled my thinking on giving a tithe. Because tithing has been mentioned off and on throughout all eras of Bible history. And here we have it with Melchizedek, giving a tithe. And in that particular teaching, God says, the tithe is mine. He declares that as His. Maybe like rent paid on a property. The person owns the property, and if you rent it, you pay a certain amount of rent. However you might want to think about it, it belongs to God, and it's the one great big giving factor that we can participate in that God pronounces a blessing upon. So a tithe was given. What was the king of Sodom's declaration to Abram at this time?
Well, you give me the people, and you take the goods.
Yes. I'll take the people and be satisfied, and you receive the spoil. But let me say this before we go on here. When Abraham, who is our spiritual father, I know God's our father, but you know, from this promise and the things that came from this, Abraham became our spiritual father. And when he gave a tithe to Melchizedek, he laid out or set a principle in gear or in action for Abraham's offspring, the Jews, and then the spiritual offspring, we, the Christians. Abraham set a principle in motion that his people, God's people, would give a tithe to God there and forever. Plus the love offerings that we like to give here, there, and yon to the needs of the church and etc. So, well, the king of Sodom would be satisfied just to get the people. You take the spoil. Did Abraham take the spoil?
No, he refused.
He refused that. Now, here was his chance to really multiply his his wealth, but he said no. Why didn't he take anything at this time?
So nobody would be able to say that they made him rich.
So that's quite a spiritual conclusion and a principle to live by. You know, God blesses us. He's good to us. And like we read earlier in the scripture, in Psalms, if we delight in the word of the Lord, then we'll be like a tree planted by all the water we need. Our leaves will flourish, our fruit will be abundant, and whatsoever we do, whatever we put our hand to, will prosper. And I believe we live to show that God truly prospers his people. I believe it's evident, not that we'll be richy rich, but that we will have our needs, and it will be very apparent that God is taking care of us. So read ahead for next week, please. We'll be back. And remember, when you know the truth will make you free and happy.